Hi everyone, Vanessa from Apple Patch. We're up to block number 13 and block number 14 of our Mystery Quilt sew along. So, block number 13 is this block here. So, I'm calling this Spinger Spinger. There might be other names for it, but that's my name for it. So, to me, it looks like a spinning, one of those children's spinning wheels. So, we are back to doing half square triangles and quarter square triangles. So this block, all the outside squares are half square triangles and the centre is quarter square triangles. The other block that you're going to be doing is almost exactly the same, except we get a bit of a play on colour. So this one is called Card Trick. It's a very traditional block. We have got half square triangles in the corners. So if I flip those over, you can see they are half square triangles. And the blocks that we made last week, quarter square triangles paired with a half square triangle, are the squares that go in the 4 middle sections of the outside rows. And then the same as block number 13, we've got a quarter square triangle block. So this is a really neat block, the Card Trick, because it's the way the fabric gets positioned that gives the block its really interesting look. And because we're doing this with half square triangles and quarter square triangles, the block looks like it's set on point. So it looks really cool. So for this block, probably my one recommendation is stick with fabrics that have a relatively small print on them, because you've got 4 pieces of each colorway and you want to make sure that they look like one solid piece of fabric. This block works really well with solids, but in this case I've got my little tilga prints in each of the 4 sections. So there are our 2 blocks for this week. They shouldn't seem that difficult to you, hopefully, given that the last couple of blocks have used the same sorts of techniques. Now this week, really exciting, we're starting to talk about your background fabric, which is why I've got some fabric here in front of me, which I think I'm going to have to ask Craig if he can just angle down the camera a bit. So hopefully you're now seeing some background fabric. I'm actually going to walk around and pick up the camera in a moment. So, what to think about with your background fabrics? So first and foremost, you want to think about the fact that your blocks are going to be touching each other, at least some of them will be, and there will be background fabric around them. So you need enough contrast so that your blocks stand out. For my tilga, I want to use an off-white to a cream, because it looks, tilga fabric doesn't really have white as such. It has an off-white sort of snow colour. So I've got this at the moment on top of white fabric and it looks a bit stark against it. Now, something to be really aware of when it comes to choosing your background fabric, if you're choosing a light colour. Whites ain't whites, creams ain't creams, and then it depends on what wadding you put underneath. So I have got white fabric here, and this is quite a white. And I've got 2 different types of wadding. I have got a polyester, which is quite white, and I have got a natural cotton. Now, I'm kind of hoping, Craig's nodding his head, so that's in shot at the moment. And you can see there's quite a lot of difference. Now, what happens when you put that underneath white fabric or cream fabric? It changes the way the fabric looks. Now, I'm just going to wander around and grab the camera. Hopefully, make no one sick. Okay, now I'm kind of hoping that's going to show up. On this side, I've got the polyester, which is white. On this side, I've got the cotton, which is natural cream. And you can see how much more creamy the white looks with the cotton underneath, the natural cotton, versus the bleached polyester. Now, in case you're wondering, I'm just going to swing around a little bit, not too fast. We also have bleached cotton, which is super white. So if you want super white, you don't just have to have polyester. We also have a bleached cotton as well. Whoops. Okay, so underneath white, your white will look cream or creamish or off-white if you put a natural cotton underneath it or a wool blend. It's also most likely going to look quite creamy. So if you want really white whites, you need to use either a polyester or a bleached cotton or something else that is actually really white. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to sit the camera down and I'm going to pull across this cream fabric. And let's see how different the cream looks when we've got the two different waddings underneath it. Craig's very kindly pulling the waddings out for me. Okay. I'll just sit the camera down for a second. There we go. So I'm obviously doing this with just one layer of the fabric, because that's how it is in real life. Got some wrinkles there, but doesn't really matter. Okay. So I'm just going to pick the camera up again. Oops. Okay, so this cream is really creamy. You're probably not picking it up in the picture, but it is quite buttery cream. So when I put my two waddings underneath, again, you can see the bleached makes it look less creamy than the natural cotton. So even with the creams, it makes a difference what type of wadding you put underneath it. So for me, for my Tilda, I don't want to use a white fabric. I want to use an off-white or a cream. And I really like the look of this cream fabric over the white wadding. So when I put my blocks onto it, the fabric looks creamy, but it doesn't look too cream. Hopefully that makes sense. And in fact, you can see on this block how much creamier it looks on this side. So when you're looking at your background fabric, especially if you're using a light colour, be aware that what wadding you put underneath it will change the way it looks. Now I'm just going to wander over and have a look at some of my Paul and Nadelstrom blocks. These ones are going against a black background because they absolutely pop against black. So that one for me is a really easy choice to make. Something you might also not be aware of, and I'm just going to get Craig to grab it out from underneath, you can also get, oh, that's just the plastic bag, you can also get charcoal wadding. So this is a wool poly blend. It's Matilda's own wadding, which is pretty much the main brand that we stock in waddings because they're Australian made and they're really lovely. And it's charcoal. So if you want your blacks or your dark colours to stay really dark, then put a charcoal coloured wadding underneath. Also too, it means that when you're quilting, sometimes you'll have little bits of wadding sometimes poke up through the needle holes occasionally. Using a charcoal wadding also helps prevent that. So for this quilt, my Paul Nagelstrom one, I'm probably going to use charcoal wadding. So there's always more than one option. Right, so hopefully you'll enjoy making your next 2 blocks, and in your instructions that you gain, I do talk a little bit about how much background fabric you're going to need, but it is a little bit of a guesstimate. That's just Craig putting the wadding back in the plastic bag, it's crinkling. It is a bit of a guesstimate how much you're going to need. You will need 3 meters to make the center of the quilt without any borders. But that 3 meters also includes an allowance for binding, so using the same color as your background fabric for your binding. If you're going to put a border around this quilt to make it bigger, you're obviously going to need more background fabric, and you'll need more of your scraps, so it depends how much fabric you've got. But you're then looking at about 4.5 meters. So it is a little bit of a guesstimate, because obviously it depends on how much fabric you have left over with how much you can put into your border. So minimum though of, let's say, 3 meters. So if you're unsure, how much you might eventually use on whether you're going to put borders around the outside, just pick a fabric that you know, for instance, is regularly accessible if you need to get more. Okay, I'm going to go and sew up my card trick block. Catch you later. Bye.